an established relationship with the person that's being murdered, and as a result, you might need to kind of give the PCs some of their relationship, like prescribe to them, like the reasoning that they have. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason that can be fun is that if who the murderer is actually like, I don't know, sealed in an envelope, like in the middle of the Clue game or whatever, then the players can have a fun role playing time, really trying to kind of like defend themselves or like helping, and it would be difficult to actually figure out based on how people are behaving because they wouldn't know if they were the murderer. And so a, a good way to go about it would be to have some sort of uh, like the narrative written out as to what actually happened. Like, this is what happened. Here's the person that has motive, means, and opportunity. And then try to give everybody an alibi that excuses one or more of those
Mm-hmm.
things. And the PCs have to figure out who has the strongest motive, means, and opportunity. So, like, you could even rate it on a scale of like 1 to 5 for each. Maybe one person has like a 5 motive and like a 3 means, but they had no opportunity. And whether they realize that or not, that'll make that other person seem really guilty. And so they're going to dig to the bottom of the narrative, establishing what each person's relationship is. And if you give them a little bit of that, but not super detailed, then they can kind of fill it in with like role playing, and they can suss out other people's uh, methods and relationships. But it would require a little bit of prescription because if you just allow it to be totally up to the PCs, then they are not likely to really pursue things in an investigative manner. So you have to have some initially group knowledge, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you have 5 PCs, uh, then there has to be some things that all 5 PCs know at the start of the mystery. Usually, this, in a mystery movie or a book, this is established kind of in the first act before the person is murdered. And so that's kind of community knowledge. Then you have to give them information that maybe they have, but only like 1 or 2 other people have. Um, and so they have like information, and then like PCs 2 and 3 also have it. And then they have information, like a couple of bits of information about everybody else. And collectively, everybody has all of the information. This provides incentives to share things and to talk through and investigate, right? So then that's how you uncover information. And that could be information that just lives in the characters' minds, because they should also have things that only they know, that only they know, and no one else knows. And then that
Mm-hmm.
gives them a decision whether to share them and when to share them. It could also be clues in the environment is typically how you're going to go about it, right? Someone keels over at dinner and you go, "What happened?" And you go, "Okay, like let's investigate. Maybe the glass has poison on it, or maybe they had a heart attack, or maybe the lights went out and someone stabbed them in the back." So then you get the other key information from the environment and the collective information that they have at the beginning, and then the information that they have about one another, and then the information that they only have. And you need to craft a narrative and a scenarios that encourage the PCs to kind of peel that onion so that they can make a logical deduction as to who is the most likely culprit. Then, you rustle everybody up and you take them into the accusing parlor and you point the finger and you say everyone else like agrees that it's like this guy. And then that's when you would open an envelope or whatever means you would have. It's kind of hard if you're crafting the adventure itself. So you would have to have basically a few different scenarios. It would make writing it difficult because you have a murder mystery where person X is murdered. And then you could do it like Clue, where you have maybe 5 ways in which they die,
Mm.
and then a scenario for each PC being the culprit. And the good thing about that is that if you've done the groundwork of giving them all some variance of motive, means, and opportunity, then the information that they have, the collective information and the information that they each personally have, can stay the same. And all you're doing is altering the scenario to provide clues that show different things, that show that, this person had access to the revolver. They were in the scenario where they're killed with the revolver, then the person that had access to it now has a means. And so you can tinker around with that, but you probably have to come up with a scenario that makes sense uh, for each PC. Here's a scenario where PC one did it, two, three, four, five. This is why Clue has 5 endings or whatever,
Mm.
because they lay the groundwork in the movie very well that all of the things that are in the movie, they make sense that any one of them would have done it. And then you just change the ending and you change some of the things that happen throughout, um, the way in which they happen, and then it makes it, a certainty, because you should always have basically three categories in your mind for evidence. One is damning, one is exonerating, meaning that, like, well, Matt's character didn't have access to the wine cabinet, right? So that kind of exonerates him from having an opportunity. He can't have an opportunity because he never had access to the wine cabinet.
Mm.
Um, and you can throw loops into that with each scenario. Maybe in some scenarios, he doesn't immediately seem to have access to the wine cabinet, but he does. And then the other one could be kind of like it's on the fence. Like it's more probable that he did than he didn't, or it's less probable that he didn't than he did, right? So that's just kind of a tip. Like that's not a certainty, um, that only like certain things would need to be certainties. Like if the person is killed in a certain way, if they're shot or they're stabbed, then it doesn't matter if Matt's character has access to all the poison in the house. It doesn't matter if he has access to the wrench and the candlestick or whatever, because that's not how they were killed. So it doesn't make a difference. And so that doesn't make him more culpable, even if he's got a whole suite of weapons available to him and all of the motive in the world. Then, but it doesn't make a difference. So you can tinker with those things, in the scenario, but you would need to kind of have, um, a scenario laid out for each PC that is static, so that you could just have it be a mystery to everybody, and then you'd have to have the circumstances in the scenario kind of evolve, and that's kind of difficult if you're the one running the game and you're participating in the game, but you're also, a character in the game. That's what I was
Yeah.
unclear. Is the person in question, are they playing in the game? They designed the adventure and they're playing, or the mystery, and they're playing in the game too?
It
Because that's
seems,
kind of like, well,
yeah,
then
maybe they do like a round robin thing and they just choose a different murder mystery every single time and they just swap between each other as GM.
yeah, the way that you would need to do that is that if it's supposed to be a mystery to even you, then you have to have a scenario for each PC being the culprit, and possibly for each kind of method of death, um, and a variety of, and you would have to just have them like random. So you pick one out of the pile, scenario one, and whether you know it or not, scenario one, Matt is the murderer. And Matt's the murderer for these reasons laid out in scenario one. And then you'd have to have a way to include only those elements in the, as the definitive answer, but you'd have to figure out a way to do it blind so that it goes along, right? I guess you could probably have an envelope within an envelope, right?
Yeah.
The envelope, that's the scenario, and then most of the scenarios are the same for a variety of different things. And then you distribute materials so that everybody kind of knows the common information and everything. But I find it really hard to wrap my head around how you would do this, and not have it just be a whole lot of work.
Yeah, because
So I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on?
as I've been reading deeper into this, what it seems to be is that these guys together, one is the GM, one is a player, but they write the murder mystery together. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
then when game time comes up, uh, they have a different story for each character if that character is randomly chosen to be the murderer. Uh, and but a lot everyone else
Mm-hmm.
that's playing also knows that the other guy that is a player that helped write the game probably isn't the murderer because that would just be too convenient. But it's kind of like a surprise to everybody as they might be given, yeah, a slip of paper that says, you're an innocent, you are the murderer, sort of thing. Um, this
Oh,
does
because
sound
you couldn't give him a slip of paper that you couldn't give him the slip of paper that says he's the murderer because he knows the entire scenario, not
right.
just
Yep.
his whether he's the murderer or not.
Right.
I got you. Yeah, that throws a wrench in things. It makes it kind of difficult.
And that's what it seems to be. This also wasn't ideal because everyone had to have a strong motive against the dead. Right. Uh, and the other thing is, like, it doesn't say, is this kind of like a one shot deal? Or is this like,
Mm,
has it been a campaign and they're just thrown into this? It seems like it might just be a one shot sort of deal because it looks like it could be, it's random. But I don't know. It could be just a regular,
yeah.
this is a brain scratcher. All I gotta say is reading this
It's
and going over it, like the randomness of it, and as well as having a player that helped you create this, that everybody probably knows, isn't gonna be the murderer, keeping someone out of it. This is it's a lot of unnecessary work that probably has to go into this. A murder mystery,
yeah.
there are topics that need to be addressed and fulfilled. But this, I think there's so many extra added points in here that things are going to get convoluted really quick. And that's the last thing you want in a murder mystery, any mystery, really. If you are going to make it convoluted, it's going to get convoluted for the players. It's going to be, for you yourself. And as soon as the GM starts panicking and going through notes, trying to recenter himself, that's when the whole game is
Hmm.
going to fall apart after that. Uh, because with mysteries, it's very difficult to ad lib and to improv. Uh, Trying to make
Oh yeah.
the mystery progress when the players hit a roadblock or hit a wall, trying to improv a way through it is very difficult without giving too much of it away. Now that's an angle you could use to help them get over this wall or whatever, but it can really trip you up as a game master. You have to be on point if you are taking notes, if you are writing any of this down, which it is really very good. If you're going to do a mystery that you want to be very involved in, you want your players to be involved in, it's probably a really good idea to have a good amount of prep notes and storyline written down in a nice binder or whatever. uh but yeah, the randomness, this just makes me think that the binder is going to be thick, and trying to, unless you have the
Yeah.
little
See,
colored tabs. What am I talking about? I'm thinking about when we were kids and everything was in a binder. You could do everything on Google Sheets now.
yeah, but here's the thing: is one, I don't know why you would need to exclude the player in question from being the murderer. If you just
Mm,
randomize it, even if he came up with all of the scenarios, then um then he could very potentially be the murderer. But the difficult thing would be if you're coming up with it for him, then he knows the scenario. If well, I'm the murderer in this scenario, so I know kind of like how everything played out. You have to have everything played out in a timeline.
yeah.
Here's what happens, then this happens, and here's the characters that are in the scenarios that happen. Um, but then he would know what the scenario is if Matt's the murderer,
Yeah.
right? That's the real conundrum. Is like not that he couldn't be the murderer, but it's like, oh, I remember writing what the clues are and what everything is for Matt's case for being the murderer.
Mhm.
And this is why it's important for everybody to have their own knowledge, and especially if they have their own knowledge and they know they're the murderer. Like for instance, if there's a secret passage that allows them to go from the kitchen to the study without passing by the butler in the hallway, and that's only information that they have, then they can leverage that information to hide the fact that they committed the murder. Um, and so, but if the player in question helped design all of this, then they know the scenarios, and in which case they're the problem's already solved. Like it's not a mystery to them. And if you're trying to write a murder mystery, then having it not be a mystery to one of the characters is just not going to work. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but it's only going to work if you manage to literally randomize like every aspect and also have it be that the player that helped doesn't know if they're the murderer, if they are, and that's just put in an envelope or something that you don't know until you open it. It's one of
Mhm.
five options. It's one of these five characters, and literally nobody knows, including the GM, um, who the killer is until you open the randomized option. So, and that's a lot of legwork. Um, but I would suspect you probably could have some scenarios where just stuff that happens changes it. Um, you have who the murderer is randomized, and then maybe you have a few events that happen, and depending on what those events are, they point toward one person or another. But you need to create like this interweaving matrix that you know, okay, I choose this from this pile of envelopes, I choose who the murderer is, and then from this pile of envelopes, I choose, four things, and they kind of go, and they'd have to all be seamless and make sense. And I think you're running on too many contingencies for it to all make sense cohesively and still keep the mystery. So that's just kind of a problem.
When I was reading this before, when I was trying to make sense of it while you were, uh, when you were talking, I was like, oh, maybe it's just the two of them. And then I thought, wait a minute, that would be fucking dumb because even if it's random, they find out who the murderer is. The other guy knows that they're not. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it would probably just be better to have the PCs investigating a murder with a rogues gallery of
Yes.
NPC
Yep.
suspects. It would be
Yeah.
much easier to kind of run that way. And then the characters can all, I mean, I get it. It's like it's fun to have like your fellow PCs like being able to like act out things, but
Mm.
there's no real good way to do it. It's just kind of like whatever, if
Yeah.
you tell somebody, you could either just cut out the player that's helping you and then you can just write it however you want, or NPCs are the suspects, or you just have to kind of do it almost like a with those dinner murder mysteries or whatever, where it's like everything is
Or,
just kind of
yeah.
chosen.
Or
Um,
even one of the party members is falsely accused of being the murderer. That one can
mhm.
also work because that could also be a a jailbreak, helping them out.
Mhm.
But what was the word I was trying to think of? I just saw it on my word of the day calendar a couple weeks ago. Ancillary, an ancillary cast of
Yes.
NPCs to help progress. Is that what
Yeah, you
ancillary means?
because you need to have
Supporting
red hair.
supporting cast.
Yeah, not non-primary. Yeah. So, um, it's that's probably a better way to go about it. I mean, I think it can be done, but it would just need to be very thoughtful. You need to try to craft a plot that is more or less static, like the narrative of the what happens can um can go like one way, uh, but then the supporting evidence that makes one outcome more likely than another. Because if they're not balancing probabilities as they get more information from one another or from the environment, then then they're basically just guessing. If it's equally likely that any given person did it, then they're just guessing. And that's not really, there needs to be a concrete answer. And the answer needs to be embedded in how strong the motive, means, and opportunity are.
Mm.
And so there needs to be one scenario that it's like 5 out of 5 in all three of those for one of the PCs. And then that's just a logical deduction to go, it must have been them because they have the strongest. And so you have to throw, you can throw wrenches in there and stuff where maybe someone, they all likely should have a motive. If they don't all have a motive, then that's just silly. Um, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in that community information. It could be something that maybe just one or two of the PCs know, PC2 knows PC3 motive, and only PC1 knows his own motive. But then you have to figure out, well, what's a way that I can get PC1 to divulge their motive, or for
Mm.
the other characters to discover it somehow in the environment. Maybe they find a photograph that, they used to be friends or something that's hidden somewhere. Then it begins an inquiry, like, well, hey, who is, like, why are you in the photo with the deceased? And it's like, then the PC can kind of like craft a narrative and whatever. But I don't know. I'm with you. I think it gets too convoluted. You need to
Hmm.
have it be that you're the GM running the game and that all of the PCs are ignorant of the scenario, um, is the simplest path forward, because I don't know why you would think that that was a good idea when it's like, "Ooh, this person over here is obviously not the murderer, so we can pretty much trust most of the things that they say and probably just try to suss out, it, because then it wouldn't become a game of interrogation. It wouldn't come like interrogating the environment and one another. It would become a game of like, how do I get information out of this one player that I know how the scenario goes, uh, and they know how it goes, and how can I get that information from them and just trust the GM's placing a lot of trust in that player to not let the cat out of the bag. And in which case it's not really a mystery at that point.
Mm.
It's just kind of a Q&A.
All right. I think that's going to bring us to the end of this episode, unless you got anything to add there, David.
No, that was a tricky one to wrap my head
Yeah,
around.
exactly. I'm still having a trouble to trying to wrap my head around that one. I'm gonna go through the community questions a little bit more thorough from now on.
It's it's some
Because
people just get some ideas in their head that are like they're cool. They wouldn't it be cool if, but they
right,
don't
yep,
think how would I go about doing that? And it's like,
yep,
sure, it is cool that if like the PCs are all like, investigating one another and like one of them is guilty, and it's like, but how do you really keep that a secret if one of them is involved in crafting the scenario? It's like, why do you need this? Why is this person should be a co-GM, right? They
right.
shouldn't be in the list of suspects. So,
Very true. All right. I think we're gonna leave that one on a good night.
and good luck.